I'm in Prague. This is the river Vltava. Now I'm going to do my best today to get these Czech pronunciations correct. If I don't, please forgive me. Up ahead, Karlův most, the Charles Bridge. Let's go. So, Karlův Bridge was commissioned by King Charles IV on the 9th of July 1357. Now, it's a numerology thing, and when you look at that date, it basically covers a sequence 1 3 5 7 9 9 7 5 3 1. So here we are at the entrance to the Karlův Bridge, the Karlův most. I won't bore you with the details of every one of these statues, principally because I don't know the details of every one of these statues, but there's two in particular that I'd like to tell you about. The statue of St. John of Nepomuk and that of St. Vitus. You can't help but be taken in by the sheer beauty of this city. Each one of these statues were commissioned by various kings, aristocratic families and the like. St. John of Nepomuk was the Vicar General of Prague, and the story goes that the then King Wenceslaus, who is, I should clarify, not the good King Wenceslaus, he came 450 years later. This particular King Wenceslaus decided that he would pry into the affairs of his queen, and he demanded of St. John that he reveal his queen's confessions. Such was St. John's loyalty to the seal of confession, he refused to reveal the confession, and so the bad King Wenceslaus decided that torture would be the way to go. So St. John of Nepomuk was tortured and ultimately killed in that process, and his body was put into a sack and thrown into the river Vltava that you see here. And there's St. John of Nepomuk there. St. John of Nepomuk, who was tortured, killed and thrown into the river. Now those 5 stars also represent the divine, I guess, event that occurred when his body was disposed of. It's said that 5 angels from the heavens descended, and as they descended, 5 stars appeared in the spot where he was dumped. Now, let's go have a look at the statue of St. Vitus. Who was St. Vitus? St. Vitus was born in the 3rd or 4th century AD in Sicily. He, from a very young age, realized that he had divine or miraculous healing powers. When news of St. Vitus's miraculous healing abilities spread to Rome, the Emperor Diocletian immediately summons him to come to Rome to perform his miraculous healing abilities on his son, whom was unhealthy at the time. Now, Diocletian was also very brutal towards Christians, and after he invited St. Vitus to heal his son, which the legend or the story goes he was successful in doing, Diocletian then offered to pay St. Vitus for his deed, and St. Vitus declined. But he also asked St. Vitus to denounce his belief in Christianity publicly. Well, St. Vitus refused, Diocletian was offended, and so Diocletian ordered for his execution. He was thrown to the lions, thus the 3 lions at the foot of the statue. The lions refused to attack and eat him. He was then boiled in hot oil, and he emerged from that without harm. Finally, he was beheaded and ultimately killed and martyred for his beliefs. St. Vitus. He's now the patron saint of Bohemia and the patron saint of actors, of people with illness. Let's go into Lesser Town. Lesser by name only, of course. Lesser Town, or Malostransky, is obviously a label that the people on the other side of the bridge placed on this part of town, but it's by no means a lesser part of town. I can assure you it is absolutely beautiful and very, very romantic, as the locals would have me believe, but it's self-evident. This boulevard is called the Malá Strana. Again, I hope I've pronounced it correctly. Up ahead there, St. Nicholas Church of Malostransky, or of Lesser Town. There's also St. Nicholas Church in the centre of town, which we'll have a look at as well. But an interesting part of this particular cathedral is this tower right there. That tower was built in the 17th or 18th century, and its sole purpose to house the city's fire warden. His job, look over the town every 15 minutes, and if there is any sign of excessive smoke anywhere, alert the authorities for that fire to be extinguished. Now, our next stop is Prague Castle. Now, right here in the Lesser Town Plaza, you can get, or you can hop on, the 22 or 23 tram that will take you straight up to the top to save you the 287 stairs you'd otherwise have to walk up. Next stop, Prague Castle. The Prague Castle stop's even announced in the tram, which is great. There you go. Here we are. The entrance to Prague Castle. Far more easier way to come up to Prague Castle than it is to climb those, 287, 300 stairs, but it's worth the experience just the same. Well, the obvious security measures here. Prague Castle is the active residence of the President of the Czech Republic, Czechia. And so it's clear that the security measures would be taken. This building here is the riding school. Now, past presidents who've been interested in horse riding, I guess, have taken advantage of it, but I'm told that the current president is into motocross, so they might have converted it into a motocross course, who knows. Now, if we're lucky, we might get to see the processional changing of the guards, which happens every hour on the hour. If not, I'll show it to you anyway. I was here the other day and I got to see it close up. It is quite the spectacle. St. Vitus Cathedral, a spectacular Gothic cathedral. The Presidential Guard marches down the centre of this plaza and into the Presidential Palace, relieving the standing sentries and guards every hour on the hour. Now, if nothing else, you can see Prague in all its glory. There's St. Nicholas of Malá, of Lesser Town. Just over the top of that building you can see the Church of the Virgin Mary, or the TYN Church, in the centre of town. And as we pan across, this Eiffel Tower looking structure, which is completely blanketed out by the fog. Communications tower, which I'm also told is quite spectacular to view the city from. Now, there's a half an hour walk up to that point, which I might just take. If this is what the Praguers call Lesser Town, you can just imagine how beautiful the centre of town is. We'll be seeing that later on in the day, but as is always the case whenever I'm on these walks, I'm completely taken by curiosity. So I'm going to take a walk back out of the Prague Castle, walk back down into Lesser Town here, and see if I can make my way up to the top of that peak. I'm thinking it's going to be quite the walk, and if we follow this boulevard all the way down, we'll end up back on Karlův most, Lesser Town, at the foot of St. Nicholas over there. Now, where we want to head to is Rozhledna. Let's go take a look at Rozhledna. Wow, this is absolutely breathtaking. Figuratively and physically. And this is one of the beautiful things about discovering new places on foot. The ability to very quickly change course, explore and discover. On the way to Rozhledna, let's keep going. How's that for peace? Prague Castle behind us, which we're going to go back to. I'm kind of thinking I might have done this in reverse. Perhaps we should have taken the walk around Prague Castle, then come up to Rozhledna, and then walk back into the city via Karlův most. But too late now. We're on our way up to Rozhledna. There it is there, the Eiffel Tower looking communications tower that can also be accessed with a funicular, but I choose to rely on these. The trustiest mode of transport I know. This is just magnificent. And we have it all to ourselves. Prague Castle, St. Vitus. Wonderful. Looks like we found another way back into town. On the way back down, we might just take these stairs back down and into the castle. But for now, we continue the steep climb up to Roshildna. I just met a couple from Italy down there, and they were standing there in awe looking back at the view, just uttering superlatives. Magnifico, bellissima. One thing Italians know how to do is express themselves. Is to, what do you say, articulate their emotions. Right now, the only emotion I can feel is that of near exhaustion, but I'm thinking this is worth it. There it is, Roshildna. I'm not sure what the significance of the name is. I'm just saying it to show off that I can say it in Czech. Hopefully I'm saying it properly. Roshildna. Whew. We made it. Up to the top of Roshildna. And it's no wonder this structure is compared to the Eiffel Tower. Well, it's actually a mini Eiffel Tower. But I'm sure the view from up there would be nothing short of spectacular. On a day like today though, in the fog, unlikely we'll see anything but fog. So we'll just spend some time and explore the hilltop of Roshildna. Well, if you happen to be at Prague Castle and you look across the hill to Roshildna and wonder whether or not it's worth the steep hike, trust me, it is. It is absolutely beautiful up here. Even on a foggy, zero visibility sort of day like today. Wonderful. Let's head back to Prague Castle. The intersection we came across before, we'll go back into Prague Castle this way and be very careful at the same time. This time of year, the dampness makes the descent a little precarious and very slippery. I've come across this little aside. This here is the city crest of Prague. Now, the three steeples there, or towers there, represent the fortifications of the city, and the bridge with the open gate represents the openness, perhaps the welcoming gesture or nature of the city itself. Now, this particular crest is the wartime version. The wartime version has a sword across its gates, right there. So there you have it. The city of Prague has two crests, a peacetime crest and a wartime crest. The peacetime crest suggests openness and a welcoming nature to the city. The wartime crest with the sword across the gates suggests, I guess, that if you're here to make war, then you'll inevitably come up against some stiff resistance. Okay, well, we're back up the hill and on our way back to Prague Castle in our sights. From Roshildna and back to where we started. Crowds are a lot bigger, as you'd expect. Being around 11 AM in the morning, most of the tourists have woken up and up into the castle they came. So we're just going to take a walk through this tunnel, and before us will be St. Vitus Cathedral. St Vitus Cathedral has a 600-year history, begun in the early 1300s and not completed in its current form until 1929. Now, like any big, massive central cathedral like this, in essence they're never really completed. There's always an addition, a modification, a renovation that's taking place. Now, the crowds and the fact that the fog won't really allow us to get a good view of the city, I'm thinking our walk up to Rosilda today might have made up for it. But I've really got to show you this beautiful mosaic, this three-sectioned mosaic of Christ in the middle with the 6 Bohemian saints worshipping him. On the right hand side we have the damned descending into hell, and on the right hand side we have those ascending into paradise. The three-tiered beautiful glass mosaic that's upwards of 500 to 600 years old, commissioned obviously with the construction of the cathedral. And from one historic cathedral to another, the Cathedral of St Vitus to the Chapel of St George. Which has as its neighbour Starbucks. The old and the new, unfortunately, coming together. I guess it could have been worse. It could have been a McDonald's. Not that I don't like McDonald's. I'm a big fan of McDonald's food. Perhaps not in a 700-800 year historic courtyard as this. There you go. Historic Chapel of St George. As we make our way back down through Prague Castle. Once again, St John of Nepomuk, another one of the much venerated patron saints of the city. So, if you're up for it, when you decide to make your way up to the castle, there's two ways. There's the tram that I showed you this morning, or you can make your way up these stairs. For now, I chose to go the opposite way, simply to save time. And some entertainment on the way down. Seems I'm the only one today that chose to tram it up and walk it down. And there it is. The castle now behind us. Let's make our way into the centre of town. Shades of the Ponte Vecchio in Florence. Although the Karlův bridge isn't cram-packed with buildings and commercial activity, It is purely the bridge itself, adorned by those magnificent statues, and you can walk freely across and admire not only the bridge but the beauty of Prague itself. Well, headed back toward the Karlův most with the St. Vitus statue, the one we saw this morning, right beneath us now, on our way to the Lennon Wall. How about that, we get to see another perspective of the Karlův bridge, the Karlův most, and go through another little Christmas market. We haven't even got to the main Christmas market yet, so that's still to come. After the Lennon Wall, we'll work our way back into the centre. Well, how's this for a bonus? On our way to the Lennon Wall, we come across these wonderful little markets at the foot of the Karlův most. Oh my word. Now this looks like proper Czech fare.
Chicken and pork, yeah? Chicken. Are which one, lady?
I think I've just found where I'm coming back for dinner. Wow. Now, this is unlike what you'll find in the centre of town, where most of the stalls are serving the traditional tradilnik, and there you go, having said that, the tradilnik. These stalls serve genuine Czech fare. Beautiful. And you get to eat in this beautiful, serene little alleyway. Wow. Well, I'm on my way to the Lennon Wall because one of the locals I came across sitting in town there having a baguette recommended I go have a look, and I thought, why not? But on the way we get to see that, and we get to discover another little part of town for when you come and visit Prague. There it is there, the Karlův most in the background, and that wonderful little Christmas market. They're the ones you really need to go to. This walk to the Lennon Wall is really something. Yet another little unplanned aside. Is this it? Plenty of graffiti, but I'm not seeing anything. Oh, here it is. The Lennon Wall of freedom and energy. Well, I guess it's a free-for-all graffiti wall that happens to be dedicated to the late John Lennon, the legendary John Lennon. Let's take a closer look. The Lennon Wall. The wall, it's graffiti, but the walk to the Lennon Wall from the Karlův most bridge, that was worthwhile. How about that? Well, they're not wrong when they describe Malostranske, or lesser town, as the romantic part of town, because it certainly is. Here's another back alleyway. Unfortunately, it's blocked off, so we'll walk back the way we came. Wonderful. Oh, the Lennon Wall was no big deal. It was just a splatter of paint, from, at least from a non-artistic point of view. But the walk to the Lennon Wall, that's worthwhile. Let's head toward the centre of town. Having come to the Lennon Wall, we get to head back via the Karlův most. A bonus for our troubles. The stairs here. Those beautiful Christmas markets. And back on to the Charles Bridge, the Karlův most. I told you about those crowds this morning. Well, they're here. Sorry about that. Just got into someone's photo. And it's the statue of St. John that attracts the most attention. There we go. The Karlův most. Back on the Old Town side of the bridge. We're no longer in the lesser town, we're in the Old Town. That was once the New Town, which became the Old Town.
Come back to me, please. Hello?
St. Nicholas Cathedral of the Old Town was built as a Catholic cathedral, but it's now a Protestant cathedral. Let's go take a look inside. As you'd expect, a cathedral of that stature is truly spectacular on the inside. But with respect to the worshippers inside, I tried to keep the commentary to a minimum. Not that you needed me to enlighten you any further. Here it is on the outside, St. Nicholas Cathedral, built as a Catholic cathedral, now a Protestant cathedral, as opposed to the Church of the Virgin Mary, the Tin Church, or the Church before Tin, which was built as a Protestant cathedral and now a Catholic cathedral. So you can understand it's the result of many a conflict between the Protestants and the Catholics. And it's in this town square where the famous Prague Christmas markets are set up each year. Let's take a look. Food, and plenty of food. Klobashi, langosh, Kredilnik. Now this is the monument dedicated to Jan Hus, Jan Hus was a cleric who dared to question the rights of the Catholic Church in the 13th or 14th century. He was martyred when he was burned at the stake for having the temerity or the audacity to question the practice of indulgences, whereby people could absolve themselves of their sins by dedicating significant parts of their wealth to the church. Jan Hus questioned that practice, and he also dared to question corruption in the Catholic Church. And he was martyred. He's the central figure in that statue. With St. Nicholas Church in the background. You can understand why people flock to the Prague Christmas markets. It's not only about the food, it's also about the arts and crafts.
Come on.
While you're munching on the food. And there's the spectacular Tin Church, T-Y-N Church. Now, this here is the column of the Virgin Mary, and right below the column of the Virgin Mary is a brass line here, if you can see through all the people. That brass line in the pavement there is the meridian. It marks the exact position of the meridian that runs through Prague, and at 12 midday, at some point in Prague's history, at 12 midday, the shadow cast by the column of the Virgin Mary onto the meridian line signified 12 noon. And at the point that the shadow met with the meridian line, obviously signals would be sent around the city to let everybody know that it was midday and it was time to take a break, perhaps have something to eat, maybe have a rest. There you go, the meridian line. The cold does all sorts of terrible things to my voice. Well, the centerpiece of the Old Town Centre is the astronomical clock. Now, I'm not going to fake it. I have no idea how this astronomical clock works, but what I can tell you is that the top clock there measures time in 12-hour lots. The red part of the clock is sunrise. The black part of the clock underneath is sunset. The round part of the clock underneath is a 365-day clock which rotates in accordance with the day of the year, and the writing around the perimeter of that clock tells us the saint that is celebrated on the day that it falls on. And there's a marker up the top there, right there, which signifies today. Now, every hour on the hour, those two little windows up there open up, and there's a procession of the 12 apostles that appear in and out of those windows. And once those 12 apostles have all appeared, the cuckoo, the brass cuckoo that's the top of the clock, lets out the alarm, or the big cuckoo, and that's the end of it. It all lasts about 10 or 15 seconds, I guess, 20 seconds. But the crowd that gathers here is quite the spectacle. You literally can't get through. Tradilnik, chimney cake. Back when a lot of the buildings around here were being built, there wasn't a very high degree of literacy. And so to distinguish between the houses, people would draw pictures on the houses. Now here is the house of the unicorn. And right over here is the house of the stone bell. The house of the stone bell. And right beneath the bell is, or was once, a checkpoint. In ancient times, or in centuries gone by, the Old Town Square was a market, and all the merchants would come here and they would pass through the tin gate down there. They would submit their weapons and they would enter this square to do business safely. And at the entrance below the stone bell stood a guard. Now, all that guard could do was stand to attention. He wasn't allowed to move, but what he could do was sharpen his weapon. And these scars in the wall here, well, if you're sitting there for hours doing nothing, all you can do is sharpen your sword. And they're the remnants of the one-time guards that would guard the passage here, which is the entrance into the markets. As we work our way around the spectacular Church of the Virgin Mary. The church before tin. Tin being the name of this Renaissance style building at the end of the passageway here, which, as I said, was the boundary through which the merchants would emerge to go and do business in the market square. So this house here, we mentioned that houses needed to be marked in order to be distinguished by the illiterate. Well, this house here is the house of the white elephant, or the house of the elephant. Now, it not only distinguishes the house, but it gives us an idea of what might have taken place in that building many centuries ago. Likely the trade of Oriental goods, thus the elephant. No prizes for guessing what the person in this house would have been. It's a gold ring on top of the entrance, which indicates that once upon a time this was the home or the place of business of a jeweller. We're going to go to the Church of St. James, and there's a really interesting legend associated with that church that I'll tell you about in a bit. But for the trucks, you'd almost feel you were in medieval Prague. And the souvenir shops, of course, and the e-bikes and the traffic. Otherwise, we're back in medieval Prague. This is the Church of St. James. Now, there's a legend I'd like to share with you. It basically goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a significant fire that razed this church to the ground, and in amongst the rubble they found a small statue of the Virgin Mary. Now, the legend has it that when the church was rebuilt, this statue was adorned in its own enclosure at the altar of the church, a thief made his way into the church and waited until everybody had gone, and he was there with the intention of stealing the tributes or the trinkets that people who'd visited this miraculous statue had adorned the statue with. When the moment was right, he tried to steal the trinkets from around the neck of the statue of the Virgin Mary. In doing so, he was immediately rendered paralysed, and he couldn't move until the very next morning when they found him still paralysed and still with his hands on the statue of the Virgin Mary. So they proceeded to cut his hand off so that he could be released from the grip or perhaps the spell of the statue itself. As a warning to future thieves, the hand that was chopped from the thief now hangs just above the entrance to the church as we go inside. A little morbid perhaps, nonetheless an interesting legend worth telling. I hope I managed to bring you some of the wonderful sights of this city, some of the most significant landmarks, and of course these beautiful Christmas markets. It is truly a beautiful, moving and emotional experience to be here at this time of year. And so on that note, it's bye from me. See you till next time. Cheers.
Christmas rat.